So for a while, the character formula on this channel has been as follows. When we meet the character at the beginning of the story, they have a certain urge, whether it's to avoid intimacy or to deny their problems or to seek validation or to control others, a lot of options. But then over the course of the story, if they're a dynamic character, they have to confront this urge. They realize what's really been driving them and they either defeat this urge or they fail to defeat it. That's the dramatic question. Will your character be able to overcome their programming? Will they be able to take off the suit of armor that's been weighing them down? I've gotten so much success out of this formula both in my writing and in my consulting work, but I've noticed that there are certain situations where it simply doesn't jive. One such situation is with child characters. Last summer I was working on a project that had a 10-year-old kid as its protagonist, and for the life of me I could not make my formula work. When I outlined this kid's journey, he felt like a little adult, already coming into this story with adult coping mechanisms that he had to unlearn and outgrow and yada yada. It took me an embarrassingly long time to realize that I was in fact dealing with a completely different enchilada. While an adult story is about the characters navigating life while wearing that emotional suit of armor, a child's story is about how they got that armor in the first place. It's the origin of that urge. It's how did they learn to chase excellence? How did they learn to protect their heart? How did they learn to be lazy and resign themselves? The child's story is the story of that. It's the climb up Cope Mountain. So how do we write the climb up Cope Mountain? Beats me, let's watch a movie.
Kia ora, my name is
Boy, written and directed by Taika Waititi. It came out in 2010 and it was really hard to get a Blu-ray of, but I'm a demon like that. Boy is about a boy named Boy. He likes Michael Jackson, dancing, a girl in his class named Charlemagne, a lot of quirks, very fun. But the core of his character is that he idolizes his absent father Alamein. Especially since his mother passed away a long time ago, Boy puts all of his eggs in the dad basket. He imagines his father in countless epic scenarios, makes excuses for his absence, and is clearly desperate for him to return. One day he does.
I'm your dad.
Oh, hey Dad.
Hey.
Welcome back.
Through the events of the film, Boy realizes that his father is an irresponsible, childish grifter who doesn't have the answers and is unequipped to nurture him.
Can you stop calling me dad? Sounds weird.
Thus, Boy develops an urge to become emotionally independent. By the end of the story, his heart is hardened. He has become his own man, for better or for worse. He will not let his emotional dependency on his father or anyone else hurt him again. One can imagine a sequel to Boy, where the protagonist realizes that he has closed himself off to emotional connection and struggles to unlearn this maladaptive urge. But one needn't imagine, because that is the parallel story of his father in the same movie. We're watching a generational cycle happen in real time, both sides of Cope Mountain. Alamein's arc is much more subtle. His emotional closed-offness is hidden under layers of phony toughness and distraction, but reconnecting with his children forces him to confront his past, and at the end of the story, although the damage has been done, Alamein takes the first steps to getting back in touch with his emotions. It's a great little movie, and I picked it for this because it illustrates the striking difference between these two narrative forms. Child arcs are about picking up a behavior pattern, and adult arcs are about managing an existing one. Child characters can have adult arcs. Like the cast of A:TLA are basically adults. They've all come into the story with formative baggage and behavior patterns they need to address and break. Adults can have child arcs too in some cases. The key is understanding whether you're telling a story about learning or unlearning. Now, this model is all well and good, but in reality, kids aren't blank slates. Obviously, they spawn into the world with their own temperaments and attitudes. Basically, we've run into the issue of nature versus nurture. You're born, that's your nature, your starting point, and then life hits you. Traumas, inputs, pattern, growth, change, basically all of the storytelling stuff. Storytelling is, for the most part, about the nurture. It's about how those external inputs shape the character's psyche. But the nature aspect is unavoidable. Like, what are you going to do? Have a cast of kids who are all just faceless, soulless, blank slates? The fix for this, I think, is we can prime the character for their journey by custom building their nature for the greatest possible whiplash. What I mean by that is, the story of Boy wouldn't be as impactful if the character was already a tough, stubborn kid. Tough, stubborn kids do exist. But if the whole point of the story is that you want your character to become tough and stubborn, you need to make his natural baseline kind of soft and needy. If you want your character to learn to think for themselves, have them start super trusting. If you want your character to learn to develop a sense of perfectionism, have them start kind of undisciplined and then have their environment pressure them into changing. That way the spring is pulled all the way back and you've set the stage for the greatest possible change. There's another way to frame all this too. SCHNEE pointed out to me that this nature-first storytelling is more common in what the kids call shonen anime.
The shonen protagonist arc, like an anime, it's built on the character not changing. It's built on the character having like a set personality, and then like the stakes are: is this going to change him? And then the character is challenged, and it's challenged to a point that the audience expects like no, like they can't possibly emerge from this with like their pure soul intact, and then they do, and it's this heroic thing.
Which I have seen echoes of in my consulting work. I've encountered kid protagonists and I've been like, so what's his deal? And the client is like, oh, he's just a hopeful and nice kid. Oh, so he's gonna get betrayed and he's gonna turn into a super dysfunctional person. No, I was just thinking he would level up his magic powers and stuff. Even though I do understand this shonenism and I can roll with it if it hits my desk, I don't love it. At my ripe old age, I'm beginning to realize why certain stories appeal to me and others don't. I think I just dislike the mentality of, this is the thing, it is the way it is, look at it, it's good. I know I got a lot of shit for disliking Aragorn-style archetypal heroes, but it really is the same mentality that colors my thoughts on this. I'm only really interested in the character's flaws, partially because I'm an extremely negative and pessimistic person, but also partially because I believe true altruism is an extremely rare quality, to the point where I can basically assume any kind act has its origins in some deeper morally neutral machinations. Truly though, it isn't as limiting as it seems. I think when people encounter my negative first approach to character, they think I just want everybody to have a tragic backstory, but I don't. That would be samey and stupid. Not everyone has a tragic backstory. What everyone does have is trauma, lowercase t, whether it was a big pivotal life event or a subtle pattern of reinforcement that at a glance had no downside while it was going on. No one escapes childhood unscathed. If all of your physiological needs are being satisfied, you just jump up the pyramid and start concerning yourself with achievement and purpose and identity, finding new abstract shit to worry about and get hurt by. Trauma is not something that happens to you. Trauma is something that happens in you. And what one person codes as trauma, another person might not. You can really capitalize on this when it comes to child characters, because something like losing a stuffed animal could be coded in the same way an adult might code an actual human death. There's a lot of leeway. If you have two friends who give a school presentation together and get laughed at, one of them could code the experience as traumatic and the other could just see it as fun. So it's not as simple as damage your character so that they have adult problems. It's more like you have an increasingly solidifying personal definition of what trauma is, and then by the time you're an adult, your understandings of what's desirable and what's not are really set in stone, and they begin to inform your choices and color your worldview. At least that's how I understand it. But yeah, I think the idea of an innate good can work if you frame it as the baseline nature of a person. Basically, you can think of all of your characters as having started from the same pure nature, but they've all grown away from it in different directions. So what one character needs to reject to get back to the light might be exactly what another character needs to embrace. We're all dysfunctional in our own ways, and exploring early development is a really cool way to see how those dysfunctions might come to be. It's like there's a backstory baked into every character, whether you show it or not. There's the story of how they got this way. And when you tell a coming of age story, you're just making that story the story. You're just writing the backstory first. Anyways, I'm going to sell you a product now. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Fun fact, I have been trying to get better with managing my assets as a creative. There's so much having to do with licensing and taxes and distribution that I just wasn't aware of before. But as per usual, Skillshare has just the course for me. At this point, in 2024, Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives. It has thousands of courses led by industry experts, in my case about picking up better business habits, but there's so much more. Film, illustration, design. What if, for instance, you wanted to learn about creative writing from someone other than me? Like you wanted to cheat on me? Well, there's all kinds of perspectives out there. Dive right in. Learning is one of the coolest things humans do. Don't take it for granted. Especially if you're in your early 20s like I am, your brain is still malleable. Now's the time to learn that skill you've always wanted to learn. It's not going to get any easier. Master difficult software to boost your trade craft. Learn Spanish, like actually learn it this time. I'm talking to you specifically. And if you have trouble staying productive, Skillshare has courses for that too. I'm watching the Notion Masterclass with Ali Abdaal, very popular. So do yourself a favor and make summer 2024 a summer of learning. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. I brought a light out here, but I forgot to charge it, so we're using the good old Snapchat ring feature. Shout out. I mentioned this in a community post, but I'm going to be at VidCon in Anaheim at the end of this month. Very exciting. And I want to meet YouTubers. Like big and small, you know? When I was watching YouTube as a kid and thinking, man, I really want to do that, a big part of it was just seeing like YouTubers be a community. And like, yeah, it got kind of cringe after a while, but there was something about that I just found so cool. So to get here and for it to all be gone now is kind of depressing, you know? It's like, I want to meet other people who are doing stuff. So, you know, if you make videos and you're in the neighborhood, or you don't mind going to a neighborhood that's not your neighborhood, yeah, hit me up. Is that it? Is that all I have to say? I think so. We'll see you around.